Hello and welcome to our special show. I'm Gargi Rawat. This is Fighting COVID with Dr. Randeep Guleria. COVID numbers have come down in the country, but it doesn't mean we have to let down our guard. So let's go across to Dr. Guleria. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us on the program today. And let's start with the questions. Now, an expert panel has approved Covaxin for children. So when can children expect to get the vaccine?
So I think it's great news that we have Covaxin now for children. We already had Zydus Covid, which was already approved for children. But the great thing is that Covaxin is approved from 2 years onwards to 18 years. So it covers a much larger spectrum of children. And this would be good news for parents who have been waiting for this vaccine, especially those who are wanting their children to go to school but are scared. Although I personally feel that they should not be linked this opening of schools and the vaccination drive. But having said that, I think we should also see that we should first focus even in children on those who have a higher chance of developing severe disease. Remember, the data that we have, not only from India but globally, suggests that COVID-19 in children is usually a mild disease. It's only on those children who have co-morbidities, which could be children who are on drugs which decrease their immunity, obese children, children who have diabetes, they have a chance of having severe illness. So we must prioritize and vaccinate them first so that we cover them and we don't have increased mortality or morbidity in children. And then we gradually open it up to all sections so that children are also covered and we can therefore break the chain of transmission and have a further decline in our number of cases.
All right. So initially, the vaccines for children are going to be given to those with comorbidities. I think the general population of children can only expect it sometime around next year is what we understood initially from the information that we had. Also, Doctor, you said Covaxin is the first vaccine for 2-year-olds. Now, again, you said that, children don't get very severe disease. So the question is, should children that young even get the vaccine?
So I think the first issue is that I do agree with you that we should just focus predominantly on the high risk group. And we should, it's not that all children who are above 2 years should get the vaccine. We need more data also. And data will emerge as this vaccination program rolls out for any long-term side effects. Secondly, the other important issue is that, like I said, even in the older age group, over the age of 18, we still have significant number of people who have comorbidities, who are elderly, who have not been vaccinated. And they have a higher chance of having more severe illness and dying because of COVID-19. So I would suggest that we should focus more on those who are elderly, who have comorbidities, whether they are children or older age group people, and aggressively try and vaccinate them, reach out to them, make them understand the issues regarding the fact that they have a high chance of having severe illness. The reason why I'm saying this is when I sit in the OPD, very often people with comorbidities come forward and say, I have, my lungs are bad, therefore I don't think I should take the vaccine. I don't think I can tolerate the vaccine. It's the other way around. If your lungs are bad, if you have a chronic disease, you should take the vaccine so that if you get COVID because of bad lungs, you can have a severe illness. So it's something that we really need to explain to people so that even those who are left out come forward and they get vaccinated. This will go a long way in decreasing our morbidity and mortality.
Right, and very important to consult doctors and not make these decisions, for oneself. Another question, doctors, about this recent study that came out that spoke about how the COVID outbreak in Delhi in 2021 shows that herd immunity against the Delta variant is very difficult. If you could tell us a bit about this study, it talks about, how the Delta variant was found to be more infectious or spread faster. And of course, this issue of herd immunity that we've been hearing about since the start of COVID. So it seems that with this new variant, it's something even more difficult to arrive by.
So two parts. One is regarding the Delta variant. There is now enough data, and this is something that was seen in India. The second wave is a classical example that the Delta variant is much more infectious. It spreads even more rapidly, or it has a faster rate of spread than even the older Wuhan variant or the Alpha variant. And that data is now emerging from across the world, and we are seeing this surge in cases both in the US, the UK and other countries because of the Delta variant, which was not there during, let's say, March, April or May when we were having the Delta variant. So there is definitely a higher chance of Delta variant being more infectious. Regarding herd immunity, now herd immunity is something that we need to remember that there are multiple variables. You may have herd immunity against the original Wuhan virus, But if the virus has changed significantly, then the immunity that we had also comes down, and the fact that we say we want to have 80 to 90% immunity, that will fall as our immune system now gets exposed to a different virus. So with viruses, especially those which mutate, and when with time our immune response also become less, the concept of herd immunity is more, in my mind, theoretical, because it's going to be difficult to achieve it because the virus will keep changing. So we may have achieved herd immunity, let's say, against the original Wuhan strain, but the current circulating strain is different. And when we achieve herd immunity against this, the virus will further have mutated. So I think we should focus on decreasing our number of cases, aggressive vaccination, and possibly having some degree of immunity in the population, so that from a pandemic it becomes an endemic disease with people having milder illness predominantly, but some people may still have severe illness.
All right, and so this is why many of the experts say that it's going to become an endemic disease. It's going to be something that we see every year, and different strains coming in, but we'll be vaccinated against it, and therefore there will be no real herd immunity. It'll just become an endemic disease. And I think various countries have also decided that this zero COVID approach was really not working, like New Zealand and Australia. So they've also changed their attitude, or their the kind of steps that they're taking against it.
Correct. So I think this is important to understand, that trying to say that you will protect your population and not let them get COVID may not be a right thing, because you are still susceptible. You could say that we will vaccinate people so that they have mild illness, but still allow them to get vaccinated, allow them to get the illness. That itself may give them a mild illness, and that is something that we will have to accept early, say it's an endemic disease. So this is what happened with swine flu also. H1N1, when it was a pandemic in 2009, we had a surge in number of cases. But now it's become endemic. We do have cases, and we are currently seeing a lot of influenza cases, but majority of them are mild. Some of them will have severe pneumonia for which they need ICU admissions. But that is how the disease with COVID-19 will also become. Also, people have argued that if we open it up a little bit, once the high risk group has been vaccinated, then the other individuals, the younger age group people, the middle age group, even if they keep getting mild infection, their immune system will get a booster dose which is natural. So by allowing people to get mild infection in the community, and you're actually giving them some sort of a booster protection which will be more long lasting. So it may be worthwhile that once we vaccinated the high risk group, we may not have to be that aggressive in terms of the initial lockdown that we had.
All right, that's interesting. In fact, that brings me to my next question regarding booster doses. And a US expert panel has recently recommended Moderna booster shots for at-risk groups. Earlier, they already recommended Pfizer. So again, the question about booster doses and your views on that.
So there are, again, a scientific view and an ethical view. The scientific view is that currently we need more data, because it's difficult to say what decides that you need a booster dose. Should it be the level of antibodies, and that we don't have a standard which we say that this cutoff, below this you will get infection, above this you will not. So the correlate of protection we don't have. And we need more data regarding cell-mediated immunity, how well do the T cell function, and how does it work with the emerging new variants. Second issue is, should it be related to duration? Should we say that, okay, all those who are vaccinated 12 months from now or 8 months from now should be vaccinated irrespective of the antibodies that they have? We are not sure about that, but that may be a more practical thing to do in the long run, because we can't start doing antibodies for everyone. So we will have to look at a cutoff time and say, okay, annually you need it, or you need it every 10 months, or you need it every 18 months. So that will evolve. But the other important issue is that first we have to, when we start talking of a booster, we have to make sure that all the high-risk groups, and most people have at least got one shot of the vaccine. It would probably be unethical if you are giving vaccination to a group which doesn't need it. The high-risk group may need it, but those who don't need it, right. And we are denying vaccines to those who haven't even got one shot. So I think what we need to do is we need to balance it out. Those who have a high chance of getting infection, or we should know that their immune response is less, in that limited population, one can consider a booster at some point in time. But to say that everyone should get a booster, I think we need more data, and we need to define when that should be. Should it be based on timeline, or should it be based on the antibodies?
All right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Guleria. We'll just slip into a short break and return with more questions for you. Welcome back to our program, Fighting COVID-19 with Dr. Randeep Guleria. And Dr. Guleria, there's been a lot of talk about the third wave of the pandemic, and the government's warning has come for the festive season, especially right now, and how the next 3 months are crucial. If you could tell us a bit about that.
So I think what I would say is that currently, if you look at our situation in terms of number of cases, we're in a good position. The cases are gradually coming down. We are having now less than 20,000 cases a day, and the vaccine drive is also doing very well. We need to maintain this, and to do that, we need to be careful that we don't do something which could lead to a surge in the number of cases. We still have a susceptible population, both in adults and in children, as we know, and therefore, if we do things where we create super spreading events in the form of large crowds, in terms of gathering where people are not having COVID appropriate behavior, then we may see a surge in the number of cases. And the next few weeks, I would say, are very prone to such activities because it's the festive season. And it's natural that people would want to meet friends, family, and go out and celebrate a little bit, especially considering that the last 18 months have been very taxing. But I would really say that if we just hold on till, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks, then we would be in a better position because we would have vaccinated a larger number of people, and we will have reached a stage where one would be more comfortable in the number of cases. With active surveillance and with other things in place, one would be able to prevent a surge in the number of cases, and the type of hospitalization and deaths that we saw in the second wave could be avoided then.
All right, so that's the hopes. We have to continue being cautious. And now, interesting news is that the US will be allowing vaccinated foreign travelers and also those that have got mixed doses of the vaccine. So that's very interesting that, mixed doses are being accepted by them. Also, they're going to be allowing foreign travelers from the 8th who have been vaccinated. And what does this mean now for Covaxin? Because there's so many people who have had Covaxin, and and they will not be allowed because it's not yet recognized. If you could tell us a bit about that.
So that's true, where one is waiting for Covaxin to be recognized by WHO and therefore come onto the list. My own feeling is now that there is enough data regarding the safety and efficacy of Covaxin, not only from the industry but from independent researchers who have looked at how Covaxin has behaved in terms of antibody formation, in terms of safety and side effects. It's just a matter of time that the vaccine should get approved by the WHO. It will be a big relief to many of us who have taken Covaxin, and it will allow us to travel. And in my mind, ultimately, all vaccines which have been found to be effective should be accepted by the global community, because that will really help in promoting travel and giving confidence that we're coming out of this pandemic. And therefore, I think that in the near future, we should have this acceptable. Regarding the mix and match, this has happened in various countries because for some time one vaccine was stopped because of the fear of adverse effect. There was the fear of AstraZeneca vaccine having clotting, and sometimes this happened with the Johnson vaccine also. So mix and match did happen, but data did suggest that even with that, there is good antibody formation and good protection. Therefore, I think that is something that we have good some data to suggest that it is still effective, and that's why they've approved that. I'm hopeful that we should also get approval of Covaxin.
All right, and hopefully that Covaxin approval, as you said, will come in soon so people can travel. And perhaps people who've had Covaxin will need to mix and match also to get acceptance. Who knows? We'll slip into a short break again and be back with more questions for you, Dr. Guleria. Welcome back. You're watching Fighting COVID with Dr. Guleria. And Dr. Guleria, my next question is not exactly COVID related, but the World Health Organization has said that tuberculosis deaths have risen for the first time in more than a decade, but due to the COVID pandemic. If you could explain this and what it means for India.
So there has been a lot of collateral damage because of the pandemic, and that's because a lot of programs which were being run could not be run as efficiently as we would want them to, because of the fact that a lot of things got shut down because of the lockdown, because of the fear of the pandemic. So many people or patients who had tuberculosis were on regular treatment through the DOT center. That treatment got delayed. Diagnosis got delayed because for the diagnosis of tuberculosis, you have to have your sputum sample given, and you have to have the labs functioning to do the test, and you have to be able to go and see a physician and get these tests done. Many of these tests got sort of delayed, and because of that, tuberculosis being an infectious disease spread more in the community, and there were more cases that we saw. The bright side was that because of physical distancing and masks, there was also a decrease, because tuberculosis also is a droplet infection which spreads through coughing and the virus, the bacteria coming into the air. Therefore, there was some positives, but the negatives were much heavier in terms of the break in diagnosis.
And that's been the experience in India as well, like we've seen more cases and more deaths taking place?
Yes, so a paper which has done modeling studies and has also looked at data from India also suggests that this is linked both to the pandemic and the lockdown, and there is now a lot of work being done to really catch up in terms of picking up more and more cases and try and correct it, because we are committed to eliminating tuberculosis from our country by 2025.
And this was, one disease that we were on track and had got ahead on, but now because of the pandemic, we've been set back quite severely. Another question is about the origins of COVID, and India has backed a fresh WHO probe into the COVID origins. What is your view on this? Do you think we'll ever really know?
That's a tough question, because it depends how much the investigation can be done. But I think it's important, because it will help us to make sure that we can move forward and take steps, or to make sure that subsequent pandemics, especially with similar viruses, can be prevented, or we can have good surveillance so that we can pick such things early and don't allow them to spread the way they did. So I think the main issue is not in terms of finding faults. It's basically to find what was the origin and what can we do so that we don't have a similar situation in the future. If you think of it from that point of view, I think this probe is important, because it will help us from the science point of view to develop strategies both in terms of surveillance and in terms of how do we go about coordinating in the global community to prevent such an event from happening in the future.
Right, and do you feel more and more now are of the opinion that it perhaps was a lab leak, inadvertent, but perhaps a lab leak that led to this?
That is difficult to say. That is one theory, but others people feel that this has happened naturally through bats, and this was a natural virus which was there in bats, jumped species, and then evolved to have good human-to-human spread, and then became a novel virus.
All right. Well, I wonder if we'll ever really actually know, and whether, that investigation will happen the way it should happen to, get to the bottom of this. Thank you so much, Dr. Guleria, for joining us on the program and answering all those questions for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.